this out because I don't know how many of you guys are aware of this in the event that you have an issue with the Code of Ethics. But you can mediate, if your board has elected to do so, Code of Ethics complaints. And you need to check with your local board regarding this issue because, again, it's a local option as to whether or not you want to be able to mediate Code of Ethics complaints. And it was interesting the way I got a call from a broker and they represented a buyer, and the buyer thought that the listing broker had violated every code of ethics in the book, and they wanted to file a complaint. And so the buyer's broker explained how that was done, right, with the real estate commission, the code of ethics, what the options were. And so that was the buyer's plan, and the buyers made it very well known to the listing broker that was their plan. And the next thing you know, the listing broker goes over to the buyer's house and says, I got a checkbook, what's your number? To not file a complaint against me. And the buyer's broker, of course, was just, you know, her mouth dropped open and said, how can you pay someone off not to file a code of ethics complaint against you? And, I mean, didn't that, yeah, it seemed odd to me too. I was like, that doesn't sound right. So I called NAR and I said, you know, they want to do this and what do you think about that? And they said, well, I guess so, you could do that. If the local board where they would have filed the code of ethics complaint has adopted a mediation provision for code of ethics complaints, then they just did that outside the formal process, but it's pretty much what you can do in the formal process, so it's okay. And that blew me away because I get that if the refrigerator isn't there and you've got a buyer who's very upset about the fact the refrigerator didn't stay, you know, and wants to go file a code of ethics complaint against the broker as a result, you should be able to buy them a refrigerator and make that go away, right? But the issue with the mediation is there's no distinguishing that kind of violation, which was completely negligent, nothing intentional, from the very intentional, you know, violation of a code of ethics. There's no distinguishing. You can mediate anything as long as it doesn't violate the public trust. If it's an issue that violates the public trust, then it becomes something else. It's taken outside of mediation. But so local boards will have to decide if they want to adopt this or not. NMAR, for those of you who have NMAR handling your code of ethics, they have adopted it through NMAR, and whether your local board has or has not, that's a matter of local discretion. But if it has adopted it, this is kind of the process for the mediation of code of ethics complaints. So complaints brought by the public or realtor may be mediated. So if it's realtor to realtor or if it's brought by the public. Complaints brought by the Grievance Committee and complaints alleging a violation of public trust may not be mediated. And public trust is defined as misappropriation of client or customer funds or property, willful discrimination, or fraud resulting in substantial economic harm. So if they decide that the Grievance Committee determines that it's a public trust issue, that cannot be mediated. Chair of the Professional Standards Committee or the board president will select one or more ethics mediators to mediate the issue. And it's initiated in two ways, either filing a written ethics complaint or through a personal telephone or written inquiry or complaint generally alleging potential unethical conduct, but which is not filed on the appropriate form, is not specific as to which article is in violation. As you know, when you file a code of ethics complaint, you allege articles, not standards of practice, articles that have been violated. And so if you get something in that doesn't really meet the proper form, or it's kind of an informal process, that's another way it can be initiated. So where a written ethics complaint in appropriate form is received, it's reviewed by the Grievance Committee, like every other situation. It always goes to GC first, to determine whether a possible violation occurred or whether a complaint should be dismissed. And where an informal inquiry or general letter of complaint that does not allege a potential violation or it's not kind of in the proper form, it will not be reviewed by the GC. It will go straight to the ethics mediator. And persons inquiring about process of filing complaints, as well as the realtors, will be advised that the ethics mediation is available as an alternative to formal ethics hearing, and that they may decline or withdraw from mediation at any point and go through the formal process. When a written ethics complaint appropriate form is reviewed by the Grievance Committee and they conclude that the hearing is warranted, or when a general letter of inquiry or complaint is received and matters complained of do not violate the public trust, then the materials will be sent to the ethics mediator. And if the mediator concludes that it's a public trust at any point that's determined, mediation will stop immediately, right? When it's determined that that's the case. And then everybody's advised about how they can pursue that with the real estate commission, through litigation, and through the formal process of filing a code of ethics complaint. Mediation resolutions that can come out of this, they include payment of disputed funds. There's the check writing that I was talking about. Repairs and restoration of property, written or oral apologies, acknowledgement of violation of the code of ethics. They have a lot of flexibility in what comes out of a mediation. I mean, that's, you're kind of, whatever you guys can agree to, for the most part, is allowed. In the cases where the realtor acknowledges the code of ethics has been violated, that admission may be sufficient to resolve the matter, or alternatively, the parties may agree that discipline should be imposed. So you can actually agree that, okay, as a result of my violation, I'm willing to, take a class. I'm willing to, some kind of discipline is in order. And that can be agreed to, and it has to be agreed to. So the discipline has to be agreed to between the parties, and it includes, like I said, discipline can include different types of discipline, anything that's provided for either in the code of ethics and arbitration manual. That's where it kind of outlines all the potential ways, and it usually involves fines or some kind of education. Parties may agree that complainant will withdraw the complaint or agree not to file a formal written ethics complaint in return for the respondent's action or acknowledgement, and any discipline imposed must be agreed to by the parties. So again, when I approached NAR about the fact that this buyer's broker had done, written this check to keep this from happening, they kind of referred to this and said, well, if the local board allows for the mediation, then yeah, it's allowed that they kind of take care of it even outside of mediation. Ethics mediators cannot refer concerns they have regarding conduct of any party to mediation to the Grievance Committee, to the state real estate licensing authority, or to any other regulatory body. They can if it involves public trust, but that's the only exception to the rule. So they can send it back to Grievance Committee. They can, in the event that it involves public trust issues. We talked about those. Failure or refusal of a respondent to comply with the terms of any mutually agreed upon resolution shall entitle the complaining party to resubmit a complaint if they have dismissed it to go to mediation. They can resubmit that, or they can submit it for the first time if they had opted for mediation prior to ever submitting it. And as far as the filing deadlines are concerned, they're kind of told, T-O-L-L-E-D, during the time that they've gone into mediation. So they go back to the original time that they will be told for that period of time and start at that point, so that they won't run out of time to file their complaint in the event that they come to an agreement and the realtor member refuses to adhere to those terms. The check bounces. And everything that happens in mediation is confidential, so it's not supposed to go anywhere except, again, if it's a public trust issue, it'll go back to the Grievance Committee, okay? So, I don't know, any of you guys in here know? Didn't say I wasn't allowed to ask questions, so I could ask questions. Did any of you guys know if your local board has adopted mediation for code of ethics? Yeah, so I'm getting some yeses, yeah. So know that that's available, and hopefully that will be offered to you if it becomes formal. Something gets filed or they approach the board, that'll be offered to them. We have some new code of ethics, rules that just came out of the November meeting as well. You guys only have to do code of ethics training every 3 years opposed to every 2 years. So that's good news, right? And if taken during this cycle, so it starts in January of 2022. So if you took code of ethics in 19, 20, 21, you're all good. And then you're satisfied, and the new cycle will begin on January 1st, 2022. Their learning objections, they focus on professional conduct, courtesies, business etiquette, and real-life scenarios. And NAR has established some code of ethics equivalency training options as well. Only courses that are offered through or approved by local, state, or NAR will qualify for equivalency options. A lot of private industry groups, schools and things like that, over the years have come up with code of ethics classes, but NAR feels like they don't meet the requirements from NAR's perspective, right? And so they're not going to allow those classes to satisfy this requirement unless that class has been approved by NAR or the local board or the state association. Okay, so when you see a code of ethics class advertised, don't just assume, and this includes even those classes that are being offered through the Real Estate Commission for CE credit, that it's going to meet the requirements of NAR, especially given the fact that we have new requirements that are coming out, right? New objectives that have to be met. So it is the job of the association to make sure that that particular class that your broker has taken meets the requirements as according to NAR. So you guys as brokers need to understand that before you run and go take a class. Find out if it's been approved, and if it hasn't been approved, you can take the objectives, from that class to your local board before you take the class, right? And make sure that it's going to satisfy the requirements, all right? NAR is going to have what they call a microsite, which means a very tiny site, right? Really tiny site. Yeah, I don't know why they call it a microsite. But anyway, the microsite is going to have a complete list of all classes and all schools and all things that are available as equivalency to the NAR Code of Ethics training, okay? So they are looking for a lot more kind of flexibility with you guys, but they want to make sure that they meet their objectives, and they're going to put them on this list and have this comprehensive list. Core standards to be omitted to clarify association's duties regarding Code of Ethics training. So we've taken care of that here at NAR at our board of directors meeting, our membership meeting. Well, we will at our board of directors meeting yesterday, and we will in the fall at our annual meeting. And you guys have to do the same. You're going to have to amend your bylaws to reflect this new training requirement. What are the options for satisfying the Code of Ethics training? Like I said, classes through the local, state, or association or online NAR courses, and then these other courses where the state or local association can actually partner with people. Or again, I was told yesterday, I think by Diane, who had talked to somebody at NAR, that even if they haven't officially partnered, if their objectives have been approved by the local board, so you're going to take a class somewhere and you've gotten that class approved by your local board, it will satisfy the requirement. Can a member satisfy the requirement by taking a course by an approved provider and association other than their primary? And the answer to that is yes. So you can take them at other boards. They don't have to be just through your local board. And we talked about the microsite and when it will be developed. And it will be developed by January of 2022. They'll have a list of all of the available courses for you guys to take. Are local boards required to review each instructor online to ensure it meets the criteria? Yes, you will. As a local board, you will have to make sure that any of the courses that are offered that you're approving meet the criteria. What defines or enforces core standards? So you guys are required to make sure that they have the Code of Ethics training and the appropriate Code of Ethics training. And so when we talk about that in core standards, that being one of the local association's charges, you have to make sure that the Code of Ethics training is taken, the appropriate Code of Ethics training is taken, and in the event it's not, then you have to take action against the member who hasn't met those requirements, right? You have to suspend their membership, or you have to discipline them in some way. You have to give them another deadline. If they fail to meet that deadline, then you have to terminate their membership. I mean, this is all part of your obligations under core standards as an association to be on top of this stuff and to take action against brokers or realtors that don't follow through. So will associations need to adjust and recertify their bylaws? Yes, we talked about that, and you should be doing it within 30 to 60 days. So sometime in the very near future, you need to do that. The full C2, I don't think we have many people. How many people in here have done that? I know Kathy, haven't you done that?
I'm not all the way done.
Okay, she's in the process. So how many of you I have? Yeah, quite a few. Great news. Okay, so if you guys did the full thing, then that meets the Code of Ethics requirements under this new rule. So, but you have to maintain it, guys. You have to continue to maintain it in order to be able to use that as your Code of Ethics requirement. Okay, So that's one way you can do it. Partner means anyone who the local board approves. Again, anybody that you guys have approved to say that the learning objectives of that particular partner meet the learning objectives of NAR, that's considered partnering. And class or one association, like I said, not a member of that association, it counts as the realtor requirement.